Hi there. Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone just a minute here to get situated, and we will get started. Okay, well, it's not a webinar unless you have a tiny bit of technical difficulty. So I'm going to go ahead and get us going today. My colleague Eileen Campbell is having a hard time logging on, so you're going to see her face, but she's not quite here yet. So we will go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining me today to talk about recruitment best practices. This is really a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and I really love talking about. Hopefully Eileen will join us at some point in the webinar, and she'll cut in, but I definitely want to encourage you, if you have questions, to enter them in the chat. My lovely colleague Kelvin will sort of help keep track of the questions as we go through, and we'll make sure that there's some time to answer questions as we go along or at the end, as the case may be. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So I'm the only speaker today. My name's Jennifer. I'm the president and the chief methodologist at Rival. And I have been in the market research industry for a little while and have always been involved in the space of innovation. And especially the questions that keep me up at night are really ones around how do we get more people to be better engaged in the market research process. And by people in this situation, I'm talking about respondents or community members. And my lovely colleague Eileen has managed to join us. So Eileen, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then you can kick us off.
Hi guys, sorry about that. We're having a little trouble with the Zoom connection here. I don't know if it's from the 6 inches of snow we just got or just normal technology demons, but welcome to our first webinar of the year. I'm sure Jen's probably already shared a little bit with you before I hopped on. A couple of just little housekeeping things. I heard Jen mention, be sure to put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat. So in the Q&A so that we can respond to those. Also, no need to take copious notes. We're recording the session and we'll make it available to all of you at the end. So feel free to give us your full time and attention. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about this year, and Jen and I talk about this all the time, is that, we're really not in the research or the survey business at all. We're really in the business of customer experience. And I don't mean in the traditional CX sense, but in the sense that what we do is all about the experience we give the people who are going to participate in the research process. And I think it's kind of high time that we start thinking about ourselves as people who deliver experiential brands that allow consumers to share their deepest and most meaningful insights, and in turn allow us to make better and more effective business decisions. So Jen is our president and chief methodologist at Rival Tech. She is an absolute, leader and advocate for this, reminds us of it all the time, that better approaches drive better insights and better business decisions. So she's here today to help us learn more about how to deliver better experiences and in turn, better insights. So with that, I will turn it over to Jen. I'll be checking in on questions throughout the webinar, but with no further ado, let's get on with the show.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Eileen. And there's a couple of natural breaking points in this presentation, in this webinar, where we can take a quick pause if there's some particular questions. Okay, I swear this is the only slide that talks about Rival Technology specifically, but I do think it's helpful to sort of set up with some understanding of kind of where we're coming from at Rival Tech. At Rival Tech, we've built a platform that is built for communities and is completely built to work on our mobile devices. I mean, it certainly works on a desktop, but we build everything from a mobile first perspective, and we build everything from a conversational approach. For us, you're going to hear me sometimes refer to as a research study or a survey or a questionnaire as a chat. We think of a chat as being sort of one piece in an ongoing conversation that you're having. And that's really kind of at the core of what we do. You can see there's a QR code. Those of you that already saw it and picked up your phones, that's great. I mean, the best way to get a feeling for how we have tried to reimagine the questionnaire is to give it a try yourself. So this will show up again at the end of the webinar. If you want to have a look now or have a look later, go ahead. We believe that really there's this beautiful space that exists in between sort of quant and qual. So quanti-qual or quali-quant, where we're able to actually use sophisticated tooling from the perspective of, how you ask your questions, how you control for bias, and those sorts of things, while also being able at the same time to sort of layer on traditional qualitative approach. So whether that's image elicitation or using video right inside of the survey experience to get people's firsthand account of things that are going on. And you're going to see, I'm going to talk about video a couple of times in this deck. And then the last piece is this, real belief that, research is best when you have like a really good strategic partnership between sort of suppliers and the clients. And we, I have a customer success team at Rival who are purpose-built to have and be able to bring to the table the kinds of skills that you need to have in order to be running communities, whether that's, social media expertise or data analysis expertise or, community experience and those sorts of things. And I think that that's quite important too, and something that we believe in very strongly at Rival. Okay, so enough about that. That was the sum total of my conversation about Rival, because I'm here right now to really talk about community recruitment. So I'm going to assume that some of you here either have communities that you're currently running or thinking about potentially recruiting a community for your research purposes. And to me, it's the community management, running a community always obviously starts with recruitment, and getting the right kinds of people into your community is the jumping off point to all of the insights that you want. I think of recruitment like sort of three different pieces, and I do like to think about it as a marketer. And I'm sure Eileen is going to jump in a couple of times here and sort of talk. She has experience as a CMO and talk about how there is a lot of there's a lot of similarities between marketing and the recruitment process. We're essentially advertising this idea of, would you like to come and, give me your insights on an ongoing basis? It's really a marketing task. And so it's sort of split into three big groups to me. One is, where do you find them? Who is your audience? How do you access them? And then the second piece is like, okay, good, you got somebody to click. Now, how do you hook them? How do you get them to join? And then how do you get them to keep coming back? And those are sort of the three pieces. I did a webinar at the end of 2022 that really unpacked that first thing, that question about how to find them. You can see the link to this webinar. That webinar, it's recorded. Calvin will also put it in the chat channel if you want to grab and copy and paste it. But in that particular deck, we really talked through these three sources. You have your internal sources, your email databases, your organic social, all of the socials that a brand would have, within their ecosystem, the opportunity to use APIs where you're actually like automatically inviting people to join your community directly from your database or the experiences that they're having. The second bucket is sort of intercepts, and that's, it used to be that intercepts were you paid somebody to stand in the mall with a clipboard. Technology has really brought the notion of intercepts a long way. So whether that's QR codes that are, at events or in person, or whether it is sort of app or web enabled intercepts where you're able to sort of digitally connect with somebody while they're doing a different task in order to be able to invite them. And then the third bucket is that sort of bucket of, well, what if I don't have access to either of those two things? This opportunity to use external sources. So, the traditional panel, river recruiting, creating your own paid social accounts, and then sometimes in some situations, working with influencers to help build out your community. So if you want to learn more about the sort of first step, which is how to find them, I'm going to encourage you to have a look at that webinar. But today we're going to cover, all right, so you got them to click. That was half of the journey. But the other half of the journey is now that they've clicked over, what do we do next? And I'm going to split this up into sort of three big buckets. One, and thinking about, this notion of getting to know you, it's sort of nice to meet you, let's get to know you, and let's continue the conversation. So the recruitment chat, the welcome chat, and then sort of a little bit on how you keep your community members engaged. So let's start with this idea that insights come from conversations, not tests. When we were doing a dry run of this yesterday, Eileen had a great quote, which I'm going to steal, which is this idea that, a test tells you what somebody knows, whereas a conversation tells you what somebody thinks. And that's really what we're trying to do in insights. We're not necessarily trying to quiz somebody about their knowledge. We're trying to understand what they think and feel about, products or services, or the market as a whole, or what's going on in their homes, and those sorts of questions. And so a conversation is the right way to do that. And just like any conversation, when you're first meeting someone, the analogy that is the easiest to think about is, when you moving this from this sort of digital experience where you write your questionnaires and you get your data and you analyze your data and you have your insights, and actually think about what would this feel like if you actually met somebody out in the real world. And, imagine that you sit down next to someone, you're waiting to get on an airplane and you're sitting in the seats and you decide to strike up a conversation, or you meet somebody in a bar. You're not going to actually launch into that conversation with a whole bunch of demographic questions. You aren't going to sort of say like, hey, nice to meet you. How much money do you make? And how old are you? And how many kids do you have? And where do you live? You're going to actually start with something, a lot more interesting and conversational than that. And recruitment for community needs to work in the same way. We need to think about how you're actually going to get to know someone over a period of time, because it's not like you only have them for 1 second and you have to ask them every single question you can think about. You actually have the ability to sort of build out that profile over time and have, an increasingly in-depth conversation with them, which is one of the things I think is so exciting about communities. So for me, I think one of the absolute true norths in community recruitment is, what is your opening question going to be? Think about it a little bit like a pickup line. We're not trying to make it be cheesy. There's some bad pickup lines out there, but we are thinking about kind of what is that opening question. In so many cases, when somebody tells me that a recruit hasn't gone the way they want it to, or we're trying to optimize a recruit, one of the first things that I'll do is have a look at what the drop-offs look like from the click. So am I getting this ad or this invite in front of enough eyeballs? Certainly, that's one of the questions. But once I got the eyeballs and I clicked over to it, if you start with a whole bunch of intrusive questions, people are like, oh yeah, I don't want to do this. Unless they're really connected to your brand and they already feel like, they definitely want to do what you're asking them to do. And that's not true of most people or of most brands. And so this idea of having a good opener is, to me, like, if you take nothing away from this and you're recruiting communities, after you get off this webinar, open up your recruitment chat and look and see what the first question is. Of course, there's a couple of sort of edge cases. If you're in Bev Elk, I've got a Bev Elk example here. Obviously, you might have to ask if they're over 21 in order to even carry on with the conversation, but that's kind of it. This isn't like I ordered some sample from a panel provider and I need to screen them right off the bat. This is an ongoing relationship that you're going to have. And I don't think it's appropriate in any situation, especially in a branded community, to invite your customers into the community, like, hey, would you like to come and join my community? Then you ask them 5, intrusive questions, and then say, oh yeah, know what, never mind, it's actually, I don't want to talk to you. Really, when you're recruiting communities, at least at the beginning, you should be open to bringing any of your customers that you've invited or who have come across your invitation to join in. Whether or not they're exactly the right kind of people that you want to talk to on the other end is something you can work out in the following weeks that come through that. But you want to start with this real level of openness. So some fun examples of what kinds of questions you might ask to start with. I've got a couple of them out here. I'm gonna use the sports example because I think it's fun and easy to understand. When we do recruitment for sports leagues or sports teams, we'll often work on something like, what kind of advice do you want to give the coaching team? How are you enjoying the season so far? You want to ask the question that your customer or your fan wants you to ask them. So if you're trying to figure out what that question should be, sit back and think, okay, well, what is the engaging question that this person sort of wants to share with me? So let's say we start with saying, what advice do you want to give the coaching team? The truth is that the team doesn't care. And it's not even that they don't care. They already know what the answer is going to be, like fire the coach, or the coach is awesome, or, why are you playing that? Why are you starting that goalie? But now the fan feels engaged, like you actually cared about what they thought. We're all a bunch of armchair quarterbacks. If you're in travel, starting a conversation with, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be? Those kinds of questions that actually make you lean in and think, oh yeah, this is really interesting. I want to answer this question. Because what happens is once we get people answering 2 or 3 questions, we kind of are generally as people, we like to complete things. So once you sort of get going, you're much more likely to continue to answer. The vast majority of drop off that we see in questionnaires, unless there's some, terribly egregious question later on, happens in those first couple of questions. So I think I've sort of belabored this well. If you are using a question in your advertising, so sometimes when we do social campaigns, let's say we were doing social campaigns for a travel company, we might sort of start by, the question, what is your most memorable vacation? Click here to join, XYZ Travels Company's community and tell us about it. It's definitely appropriate that the first question, once you click over, is the same as how you did the recruitment. So that's the other piece. Something fun and engaging, a question that somebody wants to answer, and make sure that it's matching your ad so that it doesn't feel like this is some totally other thing than what originally piqued your interest. Another thing that I think is really, really important in the recruitment part of the exercise is making sure that you're talking about your incentives. So I think as an industry, sometimes we can be a little bit shy about, we do an incentive because we have to. And, I hear all the time from clients, like, I don't just want people to come here to answer my questions because they want to win, they want the incentive. But the truth is, we use incentives because they're incentivizing. And people that are walking around in their everyday lives aren't sort of waiting on bated breath for somebody to ask them a question. They have lots of ways that they can share their insights. Everybody is asking them to share their insights. So we do need to sweeten the pot a little bit and have this opportunity for there to be something kind of concrete in it for them. I mean, we use a lot of sweepstakes. We're not talking about super sophisticated incentive programs with points or anything like that. But having an incentive is really, really important. And it's not just enough to have it. You want to advertise it. And if you listen to my previous webinar, you heard me talk at length about how it's important to have incentives in the invitation to join, but you also want to quickly reinforce that you are offering that incentive within the actual recruitment chat itself. We just did a project, a community recruit project with a company that owns a whole bunch of malls across the country. And they wanted to be able to sort of intercept people within the malls, invite them to sort of give some feedback on that particular experience, and then recruit them to be able to talk more about it, about their experiences and some ideas they had for the malls ongoing. They were very hesitant to offer an incentive at first, and we really couldn't convince them. And they managed to actually intercept people while they were logging onto their onto the mall's Wi-Fi to invite them to participate. So it was a great opportunity. It was a perfect use of Intercept. They're very interested in being able to speak to younger mall goers. That's who they were, that's who they're mostly interested in. And they were having a really, really hard time reaching those people. And definitely logging into the mall website or the mall Wi-Fi is something that young people do. I don't know about your, teenagers or young adults, but certainly mine, get yelled at if they go over their data plan. And so the first thing they do when they're out and about is like log on to public Wi-Fi. So it was the perfect Intercept point, but with no incentive, they were getting like across the country, like 4 people a day logging in to answer their questions. And we did come back to them and say, like, this is not, this is obviously not what you were trying to get. And the minute that we started to offer an incentive, and it was like $100 gift card, it was not a big thing, and reinforce it in the chat itself, we started to see, 150% increase in the number of people that were then answering their questions. And then our build sort of happened from there. And we saw their join rates go up and their completion rates go up with an incentive. So that's incentives. So just to sort of, here's sort of a few other things on sort of optimizing your recruitment chat and why it is so important. So, I already talked about start with your most interesting questions, begin it as you advertised it, show your incentives. There's a couple of other things. So keeping it short is important. I feel like I've spent the last 20 years begging researchers across the globe to keep their studies short. In no place more than this is short important. You are actually getting somebody on to have an ongoing conversation with you over a year, over 2 years, over some extended period of time. You do not need to bombard them with a million questions right up front. The only thing that you're really trying to do in your recruitment chat is get them to provide you their contact information. So for us, it's an SMS number. They put in their SMS number. They get a verification code, which they put in, double opt-in. Us in the research industry, we're all about not being spam. That's really the goal. So you want to be pretty succinct about getting there. And so short is important. Mission is another thing that's really interesting, and I find can be quite it can be quite changing, I think, when you think about your community. One of the things I often encourage my clients to do is think about the mission statement of the community. So what is this community about? What is it for? And if you go away and you write like a 2-sentence mission statement, it's actually really quite a powerful little device because it allows you to do a couple of things. One is it's terrific internal. It's a really great way to let all of your different internal stakeholders know what this community is for in a succinct way. But then also it's terrific within the community itself. You have this opportunity to let the members know this is the mission of this community. We have a community with a large media company, and it's not really, it's not like it's specifically about understanding, and package testing snacks or trying to understand, whether you want to have smoking or non-smoking on a cruise ship casino. It's a little bit more about sort of general trends and understanding. And we were having a hard time with the recruitment when we sort of first launched it. And we had them kind of come up with a mission statement. And actually, you're going to see a little video in a minute of David talking about that mission statement. But once we did that, we really had a lot more success with the recruitment. Of course, you're going to ask them to subscribe. And the last thing I just want to talk about in terms of the recruitment chat, and one of the things that we do is we actually provide a contact card. So we live in a land where our email boxes are overflowing with emails. I mean, even things that we might be interested in, but there's just so much volume. And even in the SMS space, increasingly, we're starting to get either spam or phishing or texts that start to feel like, I don't really know where this came from. And it's important to remember that even though you wake up every day, I wake up every day thinking about research and my clients' research and the things they're going to need to do. You wake up every day, you're on your way to work, you're thinking about, okay, these are the research projects that I have on the go. The individual that you have recruited into the member of your community is thinking about what is in their bucket or their worry bucket during the day. And you are going to kind of like pop in and out of their lives. They're not necessarily going to remember, especially at the beginning, that they have joined this thing until you sort of kind of make that conversation, ongoing with them, and they sort of understand. So we really like this idea of using a contact card so that the next time we reach out to them, they can actually see where it came from, who it is. We can get them to remember, like, oh yeah, I joined that. That's okay, interesting. Let's see what this next survey is about. So thinking about that piece of it is important. And I'm going to talk about using compelling visuals, relevant and compelling visuals a little bit more in a minute. Here's Land O'Lakes, perfect. So this is, I think this is an example of a community that's done a nice job of kind of my sort of top 4 things in a recruitment chat, and you can see them here. So this is a community of horse owners, and the goal of the community is generally to talk about how they feed their horses and understand, where their barns and those sorts of things. So you can see that they've started with a question. It's maybe not the most interesting question, but it's easy to answer. When you feed your horses, what do you feed your horses under your care? I mean, if you're the feed company reaching out to ask questions about feed, that seems like the most obvious question to start with. You can see they talk about their incentives. They do it right away. They're sort of reinforcing that that's part of this exercise. They're doing a nice job of being really clear about what the invitation to this community means. We're going to get these chats right to your phone. You're going to share us some feedback with Purina. It's going to be short. This is what this is going to be about. And then the 4th thing is using some compelling visuals and sort of keeping it interesting. We live in a land now where everything is super visual. It's quite personalized, and this opportunity to have some visuals sort of built in so that it's not just one question after the next is important. Though I will say one small caveat on visuals. In general, I don't think that starting with an image or starting with a GIF as the very first thing that people see, especially if you're doing this in a mobile fashion, is the best approach, because sometimes if you're out and about and your Wi-Fi is not great, those images can take a second to load. And the last thing, you click over and then you get the wheel, you're like, okay, never mind, and off you go. So starting with some questions and something that's simple, and then making sure that you've got some visuals sort of peppered in there as you go along is great. That's kind of my spiel on the recruitment chat. Eileen, I'll just take a quick pause if there's questions, and if not, we'll move on and talk about the welcome chats more.
Jen, we had a couple of questions about whether these approaches are exclusively for communities or how they might play into recruiting as sort of a bigger piece of our industry, like, for short-term engagements. Can you comment on whether you think these kinds of techniques?
100%. Like, I would use exactly these same kinds of techniques if I was like recruiting to do, let's say, a short-term diary study, same exact principles. I mean, obviously your mission's going to be a little bit different. I mean, honestly, I would love to see every study, regardless of whether you're trying to get somebody to do something else next, to think about some of these pieces. I think that we could be quite transformative in the industry if we all started every survey with an interesting question instead of a pack of demos. I would be very happy to get rid of starting anything with a pack of demos ever. Even if you have to ask 2 fun questions and then ask your demos because you're screening. 100%. I think this is usable across the board.
I think it speaks to this idea of having real empathy with your participants. I concur with Jen. I would encourage people, even if it's not recruiting, don't start right out with, you would never at a dinner party say to somebody, so how much money do you make? No. You would find some way to strike up a conversation. Exactly. And then we had a question of whether we were going to QRCA, which I don't know, but we will get back to the individual who asked that.
All right. Okay. I love it. All right. So let's talk about, to me, what is the second important piece of the recruitment process. So you got them, found their eyeballs, you got them to click, you enticed them in, they were interested enough in your incentive to give you their contact information. So now what? And so for us, the answer to now what is what we call the welcome chat. And it's the thing that happens right after you do recruitment. I've been recruiting communities since the late 90s, which seems crazy because I don't think we didn't call them communities, and we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have any tech to do it with. We managed those on Excel spreadsheets back in those days. But early on in sort of developing the methodology of how you recruit and manage communities, we stumbled into something that I think happens to some people even still to this day, which is some communities take a minute to recruit. Either you're using Intercept and you're going to kind of recruit people over 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or you're using your email database and maybe you did you have to do it in batches or whatever the reason that it can be. Sometimes it's not like you just turn it on and then it's recruited overnight. And what we were finding is, let's say it was take us 6 weeks to recruit. We would start the recruit. We would get some people, they would trickle in, and the client would feel like, okay, well, it's still not enough people to do the research I need to do with it. But what would happen would be by the end of the 6 weeks, the people that recruited in that first week, they actually had forgotten that they had joined. And so even though they might have been the most keen to begin with, we kind of lost them in the process of trying to find the other people. And so I really feel it's super important to make sure that very shortly after you've recruited, you have reinforced membership with a welcome chat. Another thing that the welcome chat is able to give us, and I'm now going ahead of my slides, is it gives us this opportunity to flush out profile. And I think I'll save that thought, and we'll start with some, kind of the key points of what I think are important with a welcome chat. One of the most powerful things that we've been able to do in the last 2 or 3 years as we've sort of moved on into this mobile place. We were so excited about video when we started Rival Tech 5 years ago. And we really thought about video in terms of the ability for the respondent, for the member of the community, to take selfie videos to answer questions. And hands down, it is a really great tool in our toolbox. Or to be able to flip that camera around and do like a voice guided tour, in a store while they're trying to find a product, or pantry tours, or whatever the case may be. We just launched one with a home builder who's getting people to do, video tours of their new homes. Fabulous. But what we've found in the last 2 or 3 years is that video is equally as powerful when we turn it on our client. When we have clients take a welcome video of themselves, doesn't have to be fancy, and remember we were talking about mission, talk about what the mission of their community is, or just simply introduce themselves and welcome people into the community. We're finding that those communities are in general, in the long term, quite a bit more healthy. It puts a real human behind the research. In fact, we are not a robot. These are actually real people. We find that when people ask me, other times, how do I get more members of my community to upload video? We always say, use video. You got to take video to get video. If you start asking some of your questions in video, or you start introducing some of your chats with video, you find that people then want to respond in kind, and it starts with you. And I've had lots of clients sort of feel like they're camera shy, or they're not sure, or it's a big production, but it's the same. We're looking for the same level of quality that we're asking our members for, which is grab your phone, flip it around, and talk into the phone for 20 seconds. Our CS team generally will help our clients if they need it, like write a little script and welcome people in. And it really makes a big difference. Also, in terms of the amount of time to read, you can watch a 20-second video and get way more information than if you tried to sort of type all that up. For the same reason that we love a video open end compared to a texted open end. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Here is one, and I think that our ASA client is on the call today. So this is the welcome video for American Student Assistance.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie, and I'm a member of Project Waypoint, here to welcome you to today's chat. Project Waypoint is filled with teens just like you and me who are trying to navigate our future and find out exactly what that looks like, which can be kind of an intimidating process. And we're all different. These chats help ASA or Project Waypoint build some amazing programs and tools that help people just like you and me. And they give away some amazing monthly prizes just for answering a few questions. It's super fun and really easy. So what do you say? Come join Project Waypoint today.
Super cute. And really a great way to sort of succinctly say what ASA is about, what the community is about, and what's in it for the individual to join. Another thing that's important with welcome chats is the cadence. So I was talking about this, this sort of notion that you would, if you're not careful, you can let a lot of time go by between the first people to join and when you're ready to do your research with them. And so one of the things that we have on our platform is the opportunity, what we call them smart distributions, this opportunity to actually personalize the experience so that when you join, 72 hours later, your welcome chat is automatically sent. So it means that every single person, whether they're joining at the beginning during a big push for recruitment, or whether or not you have a community that requires ongoing recruitment throughout the year, or you recruit it and then you set up sort of a trickle campaign where people are can come in on their own, over the year, as the year goes by. I'm a big proponent of thinking about recruitment as an exercise that needs to be done more than once. By automating this process, it takes a lot of weight off of whoever's managing your community. But even in a situation where you maybe don't have that as an option, it's definitely worth it to think about how you can make sure that when somebody joins, with somewhere within 3 days in a week, you are inviting them to do something else. Even in a situation where there's still not quite enough of them to give you the volume of quantitative results that you need for the purposes of analysis. In a really big recruit, I might even think about it as a 1, 2, 3. So I might even have a third chat that exists that is either is going through more profile variables, or is about something fun and light, or is only a handful of questions, maybe that are about the industry as a whole, and not necessarily getting down into the nitty-gritty. And I would have that go 1 week after, so that everybody that joins your community within a couple of weeks have had, a couple of touch points. And now they sort of understand that this is going to be an ongoing thing. You get this opportunity to reinforce what this is about, and you get the ability to build profile as you're going through. Okay, optimizing your welcome chat. So reinforcing that they joined. We talked about mission in recruitment and letting them know what this is about. It is always appropriate in the welcome chat to repeat that. We learn through repetition, any kind of advertising. It's not like you advertise once and you expect that somebody's going to know forever what it is that you have on offer. It's definitely important in the welcome chat to reiterate what that's going to be about. Using a welcome video. And then this opportunity to continue to build profile. And maybe some of you, when I was talking earlier about, it's not that I have nothing against profile variables, by the way, or demos. I mean, these are the questions that we need in order to help us analyze, help us understand who we're talking to. Of course, profile is extremely important. But what makes something a community as opposed to just a series of surveys? Why recruit a community if I can just go to my database anytime I want and ask and do a one-off survey? And the reason for it is that in a community, you can build profile over time. And a good community platform should be able to remember what somebody said previously so that you don't have to ask it again. And these are really, really important tools in our toolbox for how we make this engagement so much better. If you don't have to re-ask your demos in any chat, sometimes our clients will be like, well, how many, in a chat, how many questions can I ask? And the answer often is, I don't know, it's about 15, 20. And you think, oh, I could never do a study with only 15 questions in it. Well, the truth is, if you already have a whole bunch of profile built out for an individual and you don't have to re-ask those questions, you would be surprised at how short your studies can be, because now you can actually be quite direct and to the point about what it is that you're trying to do in that particular experience. So this opportunity to continue to build profiles. So while asking, age, gender, maybe, and something basic about region, understanding where they're from is to me what I generally see in recruitment chats. In the welcome chat, now is the time if you need to understand their household. So I have a community of parents couple of them that I run. So we might ask if they have children in a certain age group in the initial chat, in the recruitment chat. But then when we get into the welcome chat, that's when we actually spend the time trying to understand, are they boys, are they girls, or how many of them do you have? What does your household look like? I have clients that have segmentations that they want to run. Welcome chat, perfect opportunity to take somebody through whatever questions are required for your segmentation algorithm. This is another great opportunity for this. So you have this opportunity in your welcome chat to sort of get to know you a little bit more. And I like the sort of notion of you use a video. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about us and who we are on this side. And then I'm going to ask you a few more questions about who you are so I can get to know you better. And then we're going to carry on and look forward to our next chat. And that's kind of how I feel about what should be in a welcome chat. And does this play? It does not play. All right, well, there's David talking about Culture Keepers, which is the community that we have for Paramount. Maybe if I go to the next slide.
It's actually Jed's previous 2 slides, I think.
Previous 2?
Yeah, together with Mackenzie.
Oh, over here.
Oh, hello there. Hi, I'm David from Viacom CBS, home to flagship brands you know and love, like MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, and CBS. Welcome to Culture Keepers. It's a community of 14 to 40-year-olds who are engaged in everything about culture. So if you're talking about it with your friends and family, you better bet we want to talk about it with you too. So it could be anything like a Netflix show you've been binging, or is it a new food you've been trying? Or perhaps it's a more meaty topic, pun intended, like the pandemic or politics. Either way, we want to hear from you. So we hope you join our community and we hope we chat with you soon.
Perfect. So that's another great example of how they're able to sort of get that idea of the mission across really quickly and then recruit from there. Ooh. All right, I think that's what I have to say about welcome chats. Eileen, are there any questions in this section before we move on to the last bit?
Jen, there are definitely some questions related to how we recruit sort of very specialized audiences. But I think maybe I can just address those in the question feed. One question was, what if you can't or don't want to ask people for their phone numbers? Is there a way to do this via email?
Now, on our platform, there is not. And I have not encountered a situation where using SMS was a challenge. There's maybe a couple of countries in the world in which that can be a challenge. Certainly in China, it's a little bit of, it's not something that we can do. But if the concern is really around, will the individual give their mobile numbers? I mean, it is completely secure. Mobile numbers are not surfaced anywhere to anyone, or no one can access them to do anything other than the specific task that we have set forth for them to do. We have all of the different kinds of security and privacy certification that's required in order to do this. And so we haven't had that's not really a challenge that we have that we've come across, regardless of what industry that we've worked in. So I would need to know a little bit more about sort of what the specific challenge was. But when we ask for mobile number on our platform, those mobile numbers are not being given to our clients. They stay inside of the platform and are only used for the purposes of inviting people to do research.
I mean, just as an interesting aside, I'm old enough to remember when, the vast majority of the data we collected was via telephone, telephone interviews. And this is in some ways almost analogous to those old days. The other thing I would note is that, Rival from day one built security into this platform. And I think maybe our third or fourth hire was a head of security. And we gained full SOC compliance within our first 6 months of existence. So security is really at the heart of everything we do.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Okay, so you made your intros, you came up with a good pickup line, you got them to share their contact information. Hey, can I call you later? Right? You did a welcome chat, you let them know sort of what this was going to be, you got to know them a little bit better. Those are really sort of the heart of the 1-2 parts of recruitment. But recruitment doesn't just end once you've got them in your database and now you can do whatever the heck you want. It really is, there really is a piece of recruitment or community management that is how you continue to sort of come back to those fundamentals that you used in the recruitment process on an ongoing basis. You know, that notion that it is part of an overall conversation. And so I want to just spend a little minute here before we close up talking about kind of what happens from an engagement perspective. Now, as this is the sort of second in this series on recruitment, where I've done a little bit more of a deep dive, we will in the future kind of come back to this notion of community engagement and what happens sort of beyond recruitment. But just to bring us to the end, I do want to talk a little bit about this now. I like this idea that the components of an engaging chat survey or the components of an engaging community experience for an individual, for a member, is this combination of profile, work, and fun. So we've talked already about profile quite a bit. This idea that you can build profile over time if you have the right kind of platform. That profile can be quite dynamic. You can access people's profile information across studies, so you don't have to re-ask it, but it's still available for data. You can use that profile information in order to only target the people for a particular study that you already know qualifies. Guess what? Poof, you don't have to ask a whole string of oh my goodness, I lost the word, of screeners, that's the word, of screener questions. You are able to sort of, and then this opportunity to sort of say, like, if I ask profile later, maybe not everybody answered that survey. Also this opportunity to have a system that's smart enough to check. And so you can actually add something to a study that says, okay, oh, by the way, last time, I wanted to sort of build out, I forgot in my profile that I cared about, what state they lived in, just as an example. Not everybody answered the next survey. So can I actually check to say, does this person have an answer to that question already? Okay, perfect. If it's blank, let's ask it. Those are the elements of being able to build profile over time. In the middle is work, profile, work, fun. In the middle is work. Work is what you're trying to get them to do. That is like your work, what your insights are that you're trying to collect on that day, or you're trying to understand within the context of the study. Of course, work is in the middle. That's sort of the point of this whole exercise. And so thinking about making sure, that people are doing the work that you want them to do as members of your community. And then the third piece of it is fun. I could have used the word engaging, but I don't know, I think fun's a better word. And that is, how do we actually make this experience interesting for the other individual? And that comes back to the same idea of, like, what is your opening line? Is making sure that you're always kind of thinking about what are the questions that this person wants me to ask them, and taking some time throughout the year to make sure that you're also asking those questions. The nice thing is that asking those questions can give you, answers that you can feed back to the community and let people know. You can highlight, and sometimes you can learn some interesting things from it. And a really good way to think about that is, if you imagine that in many cases, we have brands in media and entertainment who have their communities for the purposes of helping sell advertising. So they're trying to actually they want to be able to let their ad reps go to other brands and say, you should advertise on this show, or you should advertise on this radio station, or you should, be a sponsor of our next event, because, the people that attend this event or watch these shows look like X, Y, and Z, and, maybe they're X% of them are Coke drinkers over Pepsi, or whatever the case may be. But the individual that joined your community they don't necessarily understand the complexities of that. And they're expecting, especially if you come back to a network, they're expecting you to answer questions, ask them questions about what shows they're watching, and, what trends, and what are they talking to their friends about, and those sorts of things. And so making sure that you're kind of constantly in the middle of the flow of your work, thinking about what might be a fun question to ask is important. And whether that be at the beginning or whether that be a full standalone sort of quick and fun, you start the new year, a great opportunity to ask some questions about New Year's resolutions. Seems like an appropriate thing to talk about. Might be natural as part of an overall conversation that you would have with somebody over time. And so that idea of kind of building some fun in there is an important way of keeping people engaged in the experience. A little quick case study on Alive. Alive is a kind of natural health series of magazines and digital sites. They have a community, Alive Listens. This is a perfect example. I mean, they are interested in understanding, quite specifically the wellness habits of their audience. For the purposes of being able to share that information with their advertisers and really round out the offer that they have to their advertisers. But the individuals on the community, while they're certainly happy to share what their habits are, themselves are interested. They're reading Alive. They're the actual readers. They're reading Alive publications because of the content. And so the opportunity for them to be constantly sort of coming back around to content, coming back around to asking questions about their opinion on different kinds of trends. Sometimes they'll even set up little contests among them, like, whatever the particular trend is going to be, like, okay, this month the theme is, smoothies in the morning, and I want to see what kinds of smoothies, or share your best smoothie recipe, and those kinds of pieces. That sharing your best smoothie recipe doesn't necessarily help them with the work that they're trying to do, but it provides the fun and the stickiness of keeping those members within the community as a whole. I think that's a really great example. And before I kind of come back for one last round of questions, I do think that if you're thinking about building a community, that finding the right partner is really important. There is sort of strategy and creative and measurement, and a lot of pieces of community management I think can be daunting. I do think that, there has been many cases of clients or past clients that I've spoken to that are like, I don't really like community because, I bought a community package with a supplier and they gave it to me, and then they were like, okay, good, off you go, have a good time, figure it out. And then you end up being frustrated because, your job as an insights person isn't necessarily to be thinking about the advertising part of it. We tend to get used to, you order up your panel sample and in it comes and off you go, and you really can only just focus on the one piece that you've got. And so finding people who really live in the land of thinking about the membership experience, they can bring you along for the ride and really help to support you in that. And that's something that we feel really passionately about. So just to sort of summarize, and then I'll take some questions. To me, the big takeaways are from this webinar are like delivering on your first impression, thinking about what your pickup line is going to be, and making the recruitment process as easy as possible. Making sure that you're building trust, that you are reinforcing how you mean to go on, and making sure that you're letting somebody know that they've joined something that's ongoing, quite quickly. And then kind of using this sort of framework of work profile fun on an ongoing basis. And those are hopefully the three things that you took away from this. I'm going to open this up to questions, but the last thing I will say is that on the 2nd of March, my next webinar is going to be about what I think it's going to be thinking about community really through the lens of technology. Talked a little bit about some of the tools and things that you need to do. And if you can find the right platform that has the right kinds of features in it, it makes it a lot easier for you. So I'm going to talk about the top 7 features that any modern insight community should have. Eileen, any questions on this? Final questions on this?
Yeah. Actually, the Alive case study made me think about one of the questions we had earlier was, if you're in the health and wellness space, what would be some of those sort of warm up kind of pickup questions that you might use in that space?
I mean, if we're thinking health, and depends on the category of health and wellness. So if we're thinking about the category of health and wellness as a whole, I think we sort of talked about that a little bit. So it can be about, what are the things that you do in terms of self-care? Let's talk about those. What are, here's some trends that are out there in the market right now. It depends on like where you are too in terms of age. So if you were trying to engage with Gen Zs, let's say, in health and wellness, there's lots of trends out there. You might do a thumbs up, thumbs down on here's some popular trends. Which ones do you do and which ones do you don't? Hot or not, that kind of thing. If we're talking about health and wellness through more of a like patient lens, then of course we're going to have to be quite a bit more buttoned up in terms of what, how you might approach that. And I think it's hard to kind of just come up with an example out of the top of my head.
Right.
But the opportunity, the opportunity to sort of think about, okay, well, if you were talking to a patient, like just put the paper and pen down or close Word, stop trying to write a survey. What feels like the right question to ask?
Yeah.
Well, if you were talking to a person in real life, what would be, how would you start that conversation out? Say the words out loud. And that generally will lead you to what is the right kind of question to ask to start.
I agree completely. I mean, I always think that, we don't talk like what, like how our surveys sound. And that's one of the things that we're trying to change to create some real empathy. Are there any other questions? I think we fielded most of the ones. This was actually a very inquisitive audience, Jen. There were a lot of questions throughout, but is there anything that we didn't cover? I don't know, Calvin, if we can unmute people or.
Well, you guys work on that. I will say I'm surprised I got no B2B question. I mean, I always get a B2B question.
Well, you know what, there was a B2B question that I answered offline.
Oh,
which
was there? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, how would you recruit like a very specialized audience, like, aeronautic engineers or that sort of thing? And I responded that we essentially build we use multiple sources, but we essentially build the equivalent of almost like a media plan. To go out and find those folks. So, but yes, for those who may not have seen that answer, this platform works really well for B2B, and some of the things that we do to build empathy, are as applicable to B2B environments
100%.
as they are to consumer environments. So, and Jen touched on patience, which I think is a really powerful use.
And in some cases in B2B, the opportunity to be a little bit untucked is even more appropriate. Like everything, and when you're doing your job, everything's can sometimes be super serious. So the opportunity to be a little bit fun. I mean, we have a community with IVF technicians that has like a really fun recruitment approach to it, that is trying to sort of say like, hey, let's do this together. It's really warm and friendly. It's not silly, but it's very warm and friendly. And I think that that's a great sort of example of how you can use warmth in a B2B setting in order to sort of differentiate yourself from the standard kinds of approaches that people get.
All right, so I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. So I think
that ended early. I love it.
Wow, that's the end of the
like rushing through the
right
at the very end. So awesome.
So basically that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Kelvin will send you out information on where you can find the webinar and our prior webinars. I'd encourage you to sign up for all of Jen's series because she's a fantastic spokesperson and coach. And I just saw a question pop in, so I'm just gonna make sure I haven't missed anything. Nope, I think we're all good. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, thanks, Al.
Thanks, Jen.